This right here is my new 24-volt system, and I think you guys are going to love it because it's insanely powerful for the price. It can handle 1,000 to 2,000 watts of solar panel power. It has 2.4 kilowatt hours of lithium iron phosphate batteries, a pure sine wave inverter, and it's overall amazing. Every step of the process of charging and discharging is extremely efficient. We also have a battery protect, which has short circuit protection that protects the inverter. We can also change the charge and discharge cycle bandwidth with this because it's programmable. We can also program this to whatever we need, so we can use any battery out there. Also, if you guys have 12-volt appliances, you can connect them right here because we have a converter. So this is a very simple, easy system that anybody can build, but it's insanely powerful. I mean, think about how much money you need to spend for a 12-volt system that can handle 400 watts of solar. It's pretty much the same cost as this. But instead of 400 watts, you can handle 1,000 to 2,000 watts of solar power. And what I mean by 1,000 to 2,000, this can produce 1,040 watts of charging power, but you can over panel with this. Also, these batteries are rated for 10 years with the warranty, but because they're lithium iron phosphate and we're using it with solar with low C charge ratings, these things should last 20 years or more. They are extremely stable batteries. And they will not degrade unless you store them in hot temperatures or you use them in a stupid fashion. For this system, these batteries have the perfect discharge rate to work with this inverter. They also have the perfect charge rate for a long cycle life to work with this solar charge controller. So I designed this so that all the components can work together. Also, you guys can notice there are no fuses on this system. These have short circuit protection of 100 amps, and then we have 4-gauge copper wire going up to here, and this has short circuit protection, and then we have a circuit breaker. The only positive line that's not on these circuit breakers goes through this load terminal, which has 20 amp circuit breaker inside. I totally forgot we do have a fuse. It's right here. God dang it, I forgot about that. So anyways, most of it's circuit breakers except for this little fuse, but I don't think this fuse is going to trip because this has a circuit breaker for overcurrent protection right here. So if this wire were to short circuit, this fuse would blow, but in any other circumstance, this thing would catch it instead. Also, you guys can ignore this automatic transfer switch. This is optional. I like using this so that if this battery goes low, I can switch to grid power for my AC appliances. And this is nice because you can also program it similar to the battery protect, and you can switch over to grid power, and the batteries hit a certain voltage. So if the batteries are at like 20%, I can switch over to grid power, so my batteries will last a very, very long time. And all of this is standard equipment that you can find on Amazon. Every single part here. And if you guys don't want to watch this whole video of me building it, you can simply go to my website and I will have a high definition picture of this board, and I will also have a parts list. So you can go through the parts list and just buy everything, and then boom, you have this system. So let's talk about the cost of all of these things. These Battleborns are pretty darn expensive, but for their life cycle, they're very, very cheap compared to a lead acid. It's $900 here, $900 here. This inverter is $269. It's a 2,000 watt 24 volt inverter. Next we have the solar charge controller. This is $200. The battery protect or the low voltage disconnect and short circuit protection. This is $50 for the 100 amp model. We also have this. These are like 20 bucks or 10 bucks. They're kind of overpriced, but they work really well. It's a negative bus bar. This fuse box is 40 bucks. You can buy cheap ones for $10. I definitely recommend getting a high quality one though. This converter is like $35. And then the wire, I think it was like 70 bucks because it's pure copper. It's the best you can get. It's Windy Nation. Came with the lugs. I used my own heat shrink. And then this circuit breaker is like 12 bucks. So it's pretty much the same cost as like a 400 watt 12 volt system. The automatic transfer switch is optional, but I think it's like $100 to $200. I totally forgot how much it costs. Please watch my other video if you want to know about automatic transfer switches, because that's more in depth, more detailed. I do not want to cover this in this video. So yeah, let's get started and let me show you how I built it. This is what $4 of paint from Home Depot looks like on the board. This system is going to be rearranged in a different way than my usual systems. I'm going to have two batteries down here in series, and then the positive is going to be on this side and it will go up to this battery protect. And then the negative will be on this side and and it will go up to this negative terminal bus bar. And then up here, I will connect the inverter and solar charge controller to the positive and negative. And then I can add whatever I want later on up here. Now that all the components are mounted on the board, we can wire this all up. I must say, I really like the organization of this system. And this is what the converter looks like when it's wired up. We have positive and negative, and these wires are held against the board with some cable clips. We have a 25 amp fuse. Also realize that this fuse box is designed to output up to 150 amps. We only have 40 amps going in, and I'm only using this for lights and up to around 20 amps max. So this works for my system. I've been working on it and it looks pretty good. It's nice and clean. All the wires are where they need to be. We have a 50 amp circuit breaker between this line and the solar charge controller. And then we also have the ground for this. I'm not going to wire this up yet. But yeah, everything looks really strong and good. Check it out, guys. We have this system completely built. I got some 4-gauge wire this morning and hooked up the main battery cables to the battery protect, the negative bus bar. And it looks pretty good. All right, guys, now super important part, we're gonna learn how to connect these in series. And before we connect two battle boards in series, we need to connect them in parallel so they equalize in voltage, and then we put them in series second. And before we connect them in parallel, we need to make sure that they're around the same voltage. So let's figure out the voltage of this one, 13.39. The voltage of this one, 13.37 or 36. So these are close enough in voltage that we can connect them. If they were not and one was extremely discharged, we would have to charge them both up individually. But because they're around the same voltage, we can safely connect them in parallel. So now we have the negative cable connected on the terminals, and we can put an amp meter between these two leads. And because they are almost the same voltage, there is practically nothing going through here at all. But luckily these batteries come from Battleborn charged to the same voltage. So if you buy a bunch of Battleborns, just check the voltage and then you can put them all in series if you want. And now we're going to learn how to put these batteries in series. So put the batteries close to each other somehow, and one of the positives will attach to one of the negatives. So you want to keep them close together. And you want to have a very thick cable for this. If you're doing 12 volts, this should be 0 or 2 gauge. If you're doing 24 volts, you can get away with 4 gauge, but it depends on your application. Like we have positive, negative, negative connected to a positive, and then we have a negative. So now we have a negative and a positive, and these will be 24 volts if we connect two 12-volt batteries in series. With most batteries, I would put a bolt-on fuse right here, but this has short circuit protection inside the battery. But understand that the short circuit protection, you need to use a thick enough gauge cable for the amps that it can protect too. And this cable is thick enough, so I can connect this directly to the battery. Now understand that when you're tightening this, you do not want to put a conductor between these two spots. If these two terminals touch metal at the same time, there's going to be a huge spark. The batteries will shut down, but you do not want to have that happen. This is the finished product. Also understand that if you have lots of these batteries in parallel, use a very thick gauge wire to connect them. For 24-volt systems, you don't have to deal with as much, so a 2-gauge wire is okay. If you just have two like this in series, you can use a 4-gauge, but it has to be pure copper, high-quality wire. Check this out, it is finally complete. It looks amazing. We're at 26.6 volts, and I just need to connect some solar panels to this wire right here, but it is completely finished. I need to talk about the charge profile parameters for the Battleborn when you connect them in series with the solar charge controller. So this is going to be a 24-volt system, so we need to do a modified charge profile. So typically you can use the sealed lead acid, but I'm doing user, so I can change it a little bit more. So first, temperature compensation coefficient needs to be 0. Next, the charge limit needs to be 29.2. Next, the float charge needs to be 27.2. Equalized time needs to be 0. If you get all of those parameters right, you are set. Everything else can be a standard profile for sealed lead acid, but the ones I just mentioned should be changed for best results. This is the finished product. I think it looks amazing. What do you guys think? Does it look good or what? All of the cables are situated nicely. I could probably add a little bit more organization, but I think it looks really good. So I'm actually pretty bummed to get rid of this setup. I'm going to have to reconfigure everything. The new one will last longer because it's lithium iron phosphate, but man, this is really nice. I haven't touched it at all and it works so well. It's to be done and we're gonna rip this thing out today. It feels so bad. I love this battery. But we need lithium iron phosphate and I want to make it pretty. We're gonna paint it, we're gonna use different components. It's gonna be really nice. So I have the inverter and the converter disconnected. And before I disconnect the battery, we need to disconnect the solar. So now the solar power array is disconnected. Now I can safely disconnect the battery. And here's the inverter. And here's the battery protect. I love these. They look so good too. Out you go. Holy sh! I might sell it to one of the fans. If you guys want, you know, this thing, that'd be cool. It's perfect condition. I have never over discharged or overcharged or anything stupid. Temperature controlled. Everything's good. All right. It's off. I love this thing. Look how tiny. It's such a cool shape, man. People need to make batteries this shape. It's so nice. Now, guys, we have a battery graveyard. So here's my Tesla. Those are the LG cells. And in the back with the plastic bag is my lithium iron phosphate. I'm actually going to put that in the front because I love using it for other projects. But yeah, it's nice to have this little compartment in the RV for my little used batteries.